Hello, Los Angeles. This is Justin from the Skylight Books podcast. I just wanted to let you know before this episode starts that American Cinematheque is once again having its Friend of the Fest podcast film festival, and once again, Skylight Books is involved. On Tuesday, August 26th at 10 p.m. at the Los Feliz 3 Theater, we will be hosting Keanu Reeves in Johnny Mnemonic. It is the black and white version that director Robert Longo created a couple years ago, and it'll be introduced by me, Alan Traylor, and Tyler Austin from the Better Than the Movie shows, so please come check it out. We'll talk more about it in a couple weeks, but, if you want some more info, you can check the American Cinematheque website. I'll also drop the ticket link in the show notes for this episode and probably the next one too. Okay, now please enjoy this episode. Listeners, and welcome back to the Skylight Books podcast series. I'm your host for this episode, Justin Remer, and today it's a Skylit author discussion. Our guest is a culture writer based in Toronto. She's a journalist and film critic who has written for Film Days, Exclaim, Catapult, and RogerEbert.com. She's here to talk about her first book on the 1994 film The Crow, as well as the graphic novel it's based on by James O'Barr, as well as its star, Brandon Lee. It's about a lot of things. Anyhow, it's called It Can't Rain All the Time. Please welcome our guest, Alisha Mughal. It Can't Rain All the Time is your first book?
Yes.
How did it come to be?
A couple of years ago, back in 2023. So I guess I get obsessed with things a lot. Like I hyperfixate really intensely. Like this past year, Arrested Development has been one of my very intense hyperfixations. But anyway, 2023, I got really obsessed with The Crow, and I was like, I need to do something with this obsession. And so I wrote this piece for Film Days, which is like a really tiny little, well, it's not tiny, but we are very few people who run this site, and we love it. It's our baby. So I wrote this piece, The Weight of Feeling, and it was about The Crow and Kurt Cobain. And the reason why I wrote about, I was like I wanted to write about the grunge ethos of The Crow, because everything I was reading about it was like, this is such a quintessentially grunge film. It could never have been made outside of the 90s. And I was like, oh, okay, great. But why? What's going on here? So I explored that in that piece, and it started to do well. Like people started to share it, which is not something that's never happened to me. I don't think anybody has ever read anything I've ever written. So I was like, oh, maybe I did good then. And near the end of 2023, I was still thinking about it. And I was like, I feel like I have more to write about this. There's more I want to talk about, because The Crow is there's so much going on there, like fictionally, but also historically, non-fictionally. So I took the idea to this sweet little ECW Press, which is an independent publisher here in Canada. They are truly angels that walk among us. And my editor, Jen, the proposal I gave to her initially, very different from what the book turned out to be. It didn't have any memoir. It was just like straight, it was just like a longer version of my essay. And she's like, this is great, but we should probably do something that like give a little thumbprint, like a personal touch to it. So we added memoir to it. But mostly it came about because I realized, whoa, people want to read something I've written. That's cool.
That is cool. So wait, what drew you to ECW? So this is in the Pop Classic series, which is a series I've liked for a long time. I haven't read everything, but like every time I pick one up, I've been like, this is great. And once again, with your book, this is great. So I read it yesterday and I had a really good time with it. Which, considering how it gets into dark places, is a weird thing to say, but I did have a really good time with it. But were you familiar with the series, or talk a little bit about that, I guess?
Kind of. It all started because of my friend Sid. So one of my favorite places in the city in Toronto is this independent bookstore called Queen Books. And we were just there after brunch one day, just looking around. And my friend Sid, she comes back with a copy, like a Pop Classics, but it was a Twin Peaks one. And I was like, what is that? because it's like they get really like niche on like a certain topic, which is so my jam. Like just
Yeah.
like crawl into like the certain idea and just explore it and flesh it out. And they're so tiny and like arresting. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, oh, they're over there by the 33 and a third. Am I saying that right? The
Yeah,
ones
yeah,
on
yeah,
music.
yeah, yeah.
They were like right next to each other. And so I went over and there were so many in such a beautiful array of colors. I saw the one on Showgirls. I saw the one on My So-Called Life. I saw my editor Jen's on My Own Private Idaho. I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I got the one on Jennifer's Body, which I have over here, which they're so cool. And I started reading them, and I had this sweet little thought, as I hope all writers do, where I was like, I could do that. I could write something like this. And this was like, I think a year before I actually did it. Like I had just been sitting with it, but I didn't know what I would write about. And then a year later, I got obsessed with The Crow and I'm like, oh, maybe I could write about this. And so that's how I discovered pop classics, and I've never looked back.
And you mentioned in the book that in the greater scheme of things, because for instance, I have known The Crow since the 90s, but you discovered it fairly recently.
Yeah.
When was it again? Like
2022, I think,
okay.
or 2022.
So that's a lot of hyperfixation for like a short period of time.
Right.
Like,
I was watching this every day. Yeah. It got weird.
Are you still like in a place where you're good with the film? Or are you sort of like, you know what, I need to take a break from The Crow now? Or
so while writing the book, I was I had like my media player open, and I was just like moving back. It was kind of like having like a book next to you as a reference book. We just flip through it all the time. So at this point, I think I do have the film memorized like minute by minute. Just because also the first year I got obsessed, before I'd written anything, I would fall asleep to just watching it. And I'd wake up with the credits rolling, or like the credits having ended rolling, because it used to be on Shudder. God bless Shudder. But yeah, after writing the book, I think a year ago, this month-ish, I finished like the first couple of drafts, and I hadn't really seen it from that point up until a couple of weeks ago before my book launch, where a couple of friends of mine who were going to come to the book launch, they'd never seen it, so we hosted this viewing party, and I watched it for the first time, and I still felt the same emotions. Like I got giddy at like the same time, so I still love it with my whole being. I just don't think I'm ever going to stop loving it, because I think it still is alive for me. It's still very much an alive, moving film for me. So I guess does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
so not to be contrarian, it's not a film that has imprinted on me, but it has for my girlfriend. And
Fair.
so when I decided to rewatch the movie yesterday from her DVD, she was like, "Oh, do you mind if I just sort of sit and watch it with you?" And I sort of asked her, I was like, "So why has this movie resonated with you for so many years?" And she's like, I don't know, like it just hit me at the right moment, and like it's such a like perfect goth moment in time, and like I was like, okay, yeah, great. And it just has stuck with her for decades and decades. So yeah.
I love that. And in the past couple of years or few years, I have had people come up to me and be like, this movie is so special to me, and it is because it comes to them at the right moment, like it did with me. And I think when it does that, it just speaks to James O'Barr. It unfortunately did come to him, or he wrote it at like a very tender moment, but it has that raw emotion in it that once it does find other people who experience it, it will stay with you forever, because it just needs to find you at the right moment, I guess.
Yeah. You divide the book into two sections. The first one, hold on, I want to get the names right. Literal Death and Visceral Life. And in the first half, you talk about the grief that spawned the graphic novel and eventually feeds into the movie. And then, of course, about the tragedy of Brandon Lee on the set. What made you decide, like, this is the way to approach it? Because watching the movie again yesterday, I realized, there's a lot of byways in The Crow that you kind of don't explore, but you really focus on these two. What made you decide to pick this approach to The Crow?
I think that's a very good question. I think it was just a surface level thing, like my initial thesis, and I think it still would be, when you think of The Crow from today's point in history, you think the death, like the literal unfortunate circumstances really do strike you, not just with the film, but also with James O'Barr, where it was the death of his girlfriend who kind of prompted the graphic novel. And then with The Crow, it's kind of taking all that grief, but then another additional accident happens where it kind of like adds to the grief and the sadness. So when you think about it, there's a lot of literal death going around. Like even like crew, like a couple of crew members, I think, passed away. It was a very turbulent filmmaking experience, I think, or production experience. But despite all of that, there is still so much life in the picture, and I felt like I couldn't not acknowledge that. Yeah, because the movie itself also, like their ironies around it, like it's about death and coming back to life, and so there's this beautiful balance between the two that I tried to. I felt like this was my editor. She also helped me to figure this out. Like I felt like the split between life and death was like the best way to kind of explore that, the kind of simultaneous existence of life and death, I think. I do want to ask you, what other avenues do you wish should have been explored?
Oh, not even that I would wish, but just like watching it, like remembering sort of like the aspects of like Ernie Hudson's cop character, because he's such an interesting character,
So
and there's so much interesting stuff. But it's sort of like, but I get why with your book you wouldn't like devote like 20 pages to Ernie Hudson or something like that. But yeah,
I wish I could have, because the chemistry he and Brendan Lee had was so beautiful, and Albrecht, he's one of my favorite characters.
yeah.
He wasn't in the graphic novel, so that's all Ernie Hudson. It's so good, right? Oh, and
Yeah.
the scene in the apartment, it just makes me cry every time. Where he's
Yeah.
like, "You've still got your hat on." My favorite experience watching the film is as soon as we see him and he's still got his hat on, everybody around me when I'm watching it, they're like, "He still has his hat on." I'm like, "Just wait, Brandon Lee, he'll come in and he'll say the same thing." So it's not lost on anybody.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
I like you also describing seeing it in a theater and the way people laugh when he picks up the guitar from the pawn shop. Like,
I know. I get it. I get why you would laugh, because he should probably have better things on his mind. But it also makes sense. He's a moody little boy or a little guy, and he needs his guitar, his emotional support guitar. It's fine.
So I am curious, when either like you latched onto The Crow or it got its hooks in you, like what was the appeal? Was it the style? Was it Brandon Lee? Like what really was the main thing that got you?
Oh, it was all Brandon Lee. You see him crawling out of the grave shirtless, just like soaking in rainwater and dirt. It's just the most beautiful thing in the world. It's a very shallow, superficial reason. It's just so beautiful. And then you hear his voice, and it was so sexy. Oh my God. No, he does. He brings this like physicality to the character that I didn't realize until. Have you read the graphic novel?
No, I haven't.
I highly recommend it. It gets much more heavier than the film, and I think they tried to get the film to be as heavy and dark as the graphic novel, but after Brandon Lee's passing, they had to cut a lot of scenes because the producers are like, "Oh, it's weird because he passed away. We can't make him seem like he's been hurt too much," which I don't know, sure. But in the graphic novel, the character of Eric is like the super hot, sexy guy, but he's also so nice and kind and emotional. And kind, I think, is the main thing that stuck with me. And Brandon Lee just carried that so beautifully in the film. That kindness balanced with violence, which he does. So almost like that soft masculinity, or his own version of masculinity, which when I watched it for the first few times, I didn't know that that's why I liked it, like the safety that I was getting from it. It wasn't until later when I started writing about it and thinking of it in terms of Kurt Cobain that I really understood that there's a sense of safety with these men that you might not safety and approachability or warmth that you might not get with your traditional superhero. Not that Eric is a superhero, but with a lot of superheroes, you don't, or at least the modern day superhero, they feel too much like gods. They don't feel like people. Whereas with Eric, it feels like you could be with him and hang out with him and he'll still be nice to you. You know, he won't be mean, which is what Kurt Cobain was like, he'd never be mean to a woman at a show, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, no, the comparisons that you make, because you do carry over some of the stuff from that article into your book, the comparisons you make between Eric and Kurt Cobain and Brandon Lee and Kurt Cobain is really interesting. Can you elucidate on that a little more for our listeners?
For sure. What would have been going on historically at that time is a lot of people in the early 90s would have still had a very Reaganite hangover, I think, when it comes to gender. In the 80s, you would have had, so with Reagan, you had like the very strict and unforgiving gender binary, where a man should be this way, a woman should be this way, and there's no in between. There's nothing. If you veer away from any of that, you're being a bad person. Basically, you're bad. You're morally bad. And so that was the mainstream. And then counterculturally, as the counterculture is wont to do, obviously different identities started to sprout up. Because there are different identities. There's different ways to be a person. The music that James O'Barr would have been listening to, you had different types of masculinity where it was okay to dance for a man, you know, it was okay to put makeup on, it was okay to move and to be kind to people, I guess. It was okay to, you know, explore different aspects of anything that you wanted to explore within yourself. And so James O'Barr was really into Joy Division as he was writing the graphic novel. When the film came out in the 90s, the kind of corollary to that, to the countercultural moment music-wise, would have been grunge. It would have been Kurt Cobain, who was like the poster child. So I think the film was really smart in kind of harnessing grunge and understanding that this is what the countercultural kids of today would find resonant. And so kind of Brandon Lee would have understood the grunge ethos and took bits of Joy Division and the sensitivity with that and brought the grunge dirtiness, but also the softness that comes with exploring aspects of yourself, which is what Kurt Cobain would have done. Like, he was noted for showing up to stages in dresses and saying that you should be nice to women, which was a very renegade and new thing at the time, apparently. Yeah, it was just like a way of being. Because in the graphic novel, there are moments, there's like panels and pages where Eric is just dancing because Shelley liked to dance. And after she dies, he's just dancing in a room because she was like, I wish you would dance like Fred Astaire. And so he starts dancing when she's gone. It's how he remembers her, you know, if you dance and if you cry and if you like, at this one point, he brings her a cat because she wanted a cat. And he just sits with a cat and he's like, happy birthday. It's so sad, but it's also so beautiful that you love a person that much that you don't really care about anything, and you're so authentically yourself. You don't really care about the mainstream. You don't really care to conform to anything. And I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good call too. Like, thinking about that turn of the sort of like grunge explosion in the early 90s and the fact that the graphic novel kind of exists on one side and the movie exists on the other. There's a way that it could have been done is like, oh, we need to grunge it up because that's what's hot. And it would have been completely superficial. And I do agree that I think the movie brings in the grunge ethos, as you call it, like in a holistic way, in a like organic way that like actually informs everything. And it's funny too, because so I was a teenager in the 90s, and like, yeah, I would see like footage of like Kurt Cobain performing in a dress, and I would just think like, man, that's punk rock, and that's all I would think. And it's good. It's good that that's all that I thought. Like, I wasn't like, oh, what does this say about any? You know, it's just sort of like, yeah, we can, you know, be like this. We can be kind, and we can dress in dresses, and so on and so on. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. A lot of, I think, as you say, I think visually it's really also successful because of Alex Proyas, because this was, I think, his first feature. He had a background in music videos, which is part of why everyone is like, oh, this is just a very long music video, which, sure, you're allowed to have your opinion. No, but Proyas, he did a really good job in getting I don't know, I guess like a good vibe. He brought a good vibe to the film where it's very cohesive and it's almost authentic, and it honors music as opposed to being a music video. I think it has an immense love for music, which I think is true to Obar. And Obar was on set for a lot of the time, and they had he and Brendan Lee became really good friends, and so there was that artistic communication going on, which is why I think the film doesn't feel hollow in an aesthetic sort of way. It doesn't feel like the grunge is perfunctory or is kind of like kowtowing to a certain aesthetic. It just feels like a bunch of artists doing a good job, and then the producers are obviously there being producers, but they ignore them. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember. It's interesting to me that you quote from the Entertainment Weekly sort of remembrance of Brandon Lee, because I was a huge Entertainment Weekly reader at the time. Like that was sort of like my pre-internet. That was my thing. Was like I was like I got to know what's happening, so I would read Entertainment Weekly, and I remember reading all sorts of reactions to the film that were like it's too music video. It's not a film, and watching it now, I kind of get it, because it does have this like editing style that's almost not quite elliptical, but like a little impressionistic. And if you're not already sort of like literate in that sort of editing style, you can just be like, well, this doesn't feel like a story. This just feels like images being thrown at me. And I think yeah, I think hopefully we've gotten to a point now where we're a little more literate in approaches like this, where it's like, no, this is a form of storytelling. This isn't just
absolutely, yeah,
like commercials or Flash or whatever. Yeah.
No, it's a vision. Yeah. I think we should respect Proyas for kind of doing this. I was going to say something I completely lost. Oh, Ebert. His Roger Ebert's review for the film is one of my favorite, just because of how kind it is. And one of my favorite lines from the review is he acknowledges how it could seem like a music video, but at the same time, he's like, if it can't be any different, just because music is such a big part of the character's life that if it weren't this way, it wouldn't be the same story, It wouldn't, like, to want for it to be another way is to kind of like it's to kind of almost not understand the film, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and there's certain things that you highlight in the book that I don't think I definitely didn't get at the time, and I don't think I would have gotten if I wasn't looking out for it because of what you had said. Like, for instance, the line that I'm going to try to remember the actor's name. I think David Patrick Kelly, the guy who gets put in the car and repeats this line from Paradise Lost that he was using to taunt Shelley with when he was attacking her. Like, I didn't really catch what he was saying, like, because it's so overwhelming in the moment of the attack, and then even just like when they reprise it, like I understand the emotion more the words, but then when you like lay out the quote, which I don't really remember it, but it's about goodness.
Abashed the devil stood and felt how awful goodness was.
Yes, and it's just like one of those things that's like, oh, this is really bringing in like a fascinating poetic text into this moment and really sort of adding a depth, but you also have to dig in to get it. Like, it's not going to just serve it up to you. So, yeah.
That also is like a carryover from the graphic novel, because Eric is a really smart guy. And as most musicians would be, and as he is in the book, he's just reading a bunch of poetry. He quotes decadent poets all the time. There's a really long line. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's just a lot of the stuff he's saying. It's so funny, because you have like this guy who brutally in the novel he gets like a very sharp sword, like a samurai sword, chops off the heads of one of the guys, and while he's doing it, he's just reciting a bit from I don't know, some French poet, Baudelaire, I think. He's just
Yeah.
reciting a bit of Baudelaire while he's doing this. And it's stark. It's beautiful. It's funny because he's doing it with a sense of humor, but also he's doing it because his feelings are that rich. His feelings are that intricate and also that ancient, that this poetry is what's articulating it. And he's almost showing it to these bad guys, being like, this is what you've done to me. Like, I want you to feel it too. And I love that moment in the film where I think T-Bird, yeah, he recites it at the end almost like a mantra again and again, because he's finally understanding Eric's feeling. You know, he's finally like, this is how awful goodness feels. And it's in the book, there's like, it's much more prolonged and much more almost torturous. The feeling, the bad guy's understanding of the awfulness that he's caused. It's so good.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, the way that you track, and I'm sure it partly comes from the reading of the graphic novel, but the way that you track that the film is about Eric's failure to understand that revenge is going to bring him redemption, and that it's really about forgiving himself. Mm-hmm. I would say as a teenager, I never quite understood that, and that's maybe what kept me from liking The Crow as much as I could. I was just sort of like, well, he kills everybody, and then he gets to go off with his girlfriend. And like, I think this time, because you had highlighted it, I was paying much more attention to like his actual journey, and understanding that is what eventually redeems him, is him forgiving himself for what happened.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that, so I could understand The Crow. Yeah.
No, that's my job. No, it's that moment. I think that moment at the end where Sarah's like, "You're dead and you're never coming back," and he's just like, "You'll just have to forgive me for that." That moment, I think, is what made me decide that I wanted to write about the film, because it never fails to make me cry. Where he's just like, it's such a short sentence, and I know that it couldn't have been longer because he did pass away and a lot of the ending had to be truncated and stuff, but how he delivers it with so much feeling, but all he's saying is, "You'll just have to forgive me for that." It just knocks me down every time, because that's all. And it's a lesson that Obar had to learn too. If you read the introduction for the graphic novel, because it was really awful what happened, obviously, with the girl who was Shelley, but then also Brandon Lee. When he passed away, Obar felt doubly responsible. And he's like, if I'd never written this book, this wouldn't have happened. And really, he learned that lesson. Like, when all of this terrible stuff happens, really all we can do is just forgive ourselves and kind of just grieve, and not move on from the grief, but carry that grieving, but not, hold ourselves responsible for something that was genuinely a freak accident. And I'm glad that I was able to see it. I'm glad I was able to see that moment of forgiveness in the film itself, because it did miss me the first few times that I watched it, where he's holding the flowers at the grave. And I don't know if it was intentional on Proyas's part, but it does feel like a moment of like ritualistic, where he's, finally visiting the grave, finally, able to understand that they're dead, which is beautiful, and just has to forgive Shelley and himself for dying, I guess.
Yeah. It's like smuggling ideas into like a genre framework. And like, as a kid, I just saw the like action movie comic book aspects of it. Oh, we've got to stop the bad guy. He's kidnapped my friend, and I've got to get her back. That kind of, but it's really the other stuff that is the important stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting too that the line where he says, "You're just going to have to forgive me for that," because it's the perfect thing you describe about Brandon Lee, where he's being genuine and heartfelt, but he's also kind of light and very charming. Like, it's like this perfect Brandon Lee moment, just encapsulated in like 2 seconds. Like, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, he understands also that he's talking to a child, and he makes himself readable, or digestible to this child that he's talking to, but he says, oh, the most beautiful thing with that little sparkle in his eyes. And he's so good. Isn't he so great in the film?
Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah. And honestly, the because of your book, I knew it was coming. Like when the movie ends and then it just says for Brandon and Eliza, that's the moment I lost it.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
I completely lost it. Yeah, no, because I've definitely seen Rapid Fire. I don't know if I've seen any of his other action films, but what he did here is such a different performance, such a heartfelt performance that it is like, oh, if only we got more of him.
I know. Yeah.
It's a real bummer.
And yeah, he studied the character so well, and you knew, like, if you just watch like a few, because they are on YouTube. If you watch a few of the on-set interviews, he got this character, like he did his homework. And like one of my favorite things I learned while writing it was he studied the method at the Strasberg Institute. So he knew what he was doing. He understood, like, not in a toxic, Jared Leto method way, but in like a doing your homework sort of way where you kind of just, which is what acting is. He did his job, and he understood that, you can do action, but you also have to carry the character at the same time, which I think he did a good job, and I wish he was still around.
Yeah. I meant to ask at the beginning, did you want to read an excerpt from the book?
Do you think we have time? I don't mind.
Oh, yeah,
I do have
totally.
a bit.
Totally, yeah.
I am wondering, how long should it be?
However long you want. It's a podcast. Yeah. What yeah. I've got all afternoon, so yeah. Whatever.
Samesies. This one, I did want to kind of, because of the grunge ethos, I feel like I'm better at writing than I am at talking. And so this is from page 109, and it does sow a bit of suspense because it makes you wonder, what is this doing in a book about the Crow? But I promise it'll make sense. So page 109. In the 1980s in the U.S., let me begin again. The 1980s in the U.S. saw, under the election of deeply conservative Ronald Reagan as president, a hard and uncompromising stratification and polarization of gender roles within mainstream culture. Much of the stratification was in response to the sexual revolution and the women's rights movement of the 60s. Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Susan Faludi penned Backlash, the Undeclared War Against American Women, in 1991, a searing and thorough look at the backlash against women's rights specifically under the Reagan administration. As more and more women entered the workforce, the 80s giddily and loudly declared that the struggle for women's rights is won, Faludi writes. At the same time, though, mainstream media peddled tales of women's woes relating to workplace burnout. It was being feverishly reported that working too much could lead a woman to hair loss, bad nerves, alcoholism, and even heart attacks, which in turn could cause infertility issues. Stories of women experiencing work-related burnout symptoms, a newsworthy topic as a number of women working outside the home increased to unprecedented numbers, both daunted women and emboldened the anti-feminism movement. How could it be that despite having won the fight for women's rights, women were still so miserable? The prevailing wisdom of the past decade has supported one and only one answer to this riddle. It must be that equality that's causing all the pain, Faludi wrote from the vantage point of the 90s. A spokesperson for Reagan called feminism a straitjacket for women. For Reagan-era conservatives, men and women had their distinct roles. Men belonged to the workplace, while women belonged in the home. Burnout symptoms were rationalized as being the inevitable fatigue of a body unfit for the same labor as men. Ideology is a hell of a drug. I promise it'll make sense when you read the book, because I bring that up to kind of segue into talking about gender and what is happening gender-wise in the film. So yeah, that was socially, when it comes to gender, what was going on when the Crow came onto the scene.
Yeah, then you kind of like relay a lot of the sort of like very successful movies in which Glenn Close has to play like, this woman who cannot exist in modern society. She
Right?
can't have it all.
Fatal Attraction. Fatal Attraction, I love. So I wrote a piece about Fatal Attraction. It was my first for Roger Ebert last year, and that's when I kind of realized how awful Adrian Lyne is. Oh God, I love his films. I love what was that one he did that I really like? I can't remember it suddenly. Oh God.
Is it an older one? Is it like Jacob's Ladder
Yeah.
or?
Jacob's Ladder. I love
Okay.
Jacob's Ladder
All
so
right.
much. Oh my
Yeah.
God. But I hate Adrian Lyne because he was like, I love my wife because she stays at home and all she does is wait for me to come home. And I'm like, whoa, okay. But Glenn Close did such a good job in that movie. But the message is like, this is like a horrible vixen femme fatale. She's going to ruin your life and she's insane. And I'm like, is she really insane though? Or all she's doing in the movie is like begging for Michael Douglas's character to just listen to her. I mean, she does do like some illegal things, and I'm not condoning that. But before any of that, she's just like, please listen to me. And what was happening in the theaters when this movie came out, people were men were yelling at the screen, being like, for the end of it, they're like, kill the bitch, kill the
Yeah.
bitch, Michael. Yeah. And it's like, she's not that bad. She just wants to be heard. Don't be mean to her. But
Yeah. No, it's wildly like, yeah. It's one of those things that like I think we're having a moment right now where we're sort of like looking back at a lot of pop culture and just sort of seeing like how much toxicity we just kind of rolled with. We were just like we rolled with it, we loved it, and then like and it's like and it's kind of why we're here right now.
I know. But I am glad that we are reconsidering it, with Britney Spears and Pamela Anderson. It's like, it is a bit too late, but I'm glad that we're finally having the conversations.
Yeah. No, Britney Spears was definitely one of the things I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you've really wanted to talk about the book you haven't had a chance to yet?
No, I just wanted to say that I had a really lovely time writing this book, and I hope I get to write more. It is such a beautiful film, and especially in the face of Rust, the Alec Baldwin one that came out. I think it's workplace safety is a very important thing, and Brandon Lee was all for workplace safety. One of his things that he said was like, it helps nobody if you get injured on set. So I don't like it when people have conspiracy theories about how he died, or about how his father died. Those are weird and I think almost disrespectful. I mean, I love aliens. I think that's a safe conspiracy theory to have. But about this kind of stuff, I don't think it's doing anybody any favors to talk about. Because some people think that he got assassinated or something by the Triad, and I don't know. I don't think that's what happened. This was a very freak accident that could have been avoided, and yeah, it's disrespectful.
Yeah.
That was a bunch of thoughts jumbled into one. I'm sorry.
No. But I mean, it's legit because, like, yeah, I think in an odd way because it's such a senseless thing to happen, and I think that maybe the conspiracy theories are just a way of like, well, of course it makes perfect sense in this way, but it's no, it's probably just the senselessness of some of the things that happen to human beings.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Are there any other like film writing projects that you're working on that you're excited about that you can talk about, or anything like that? Or
I have been unemployed for the past month. I've been doing nothing. It's kind of because like for the past, I think, a year and a half, I've been looking forward to this book's release, and so I've just been like working so much and being all excited, and then it finally came out on the 15th, and I was like, now what do we do now? But I am like slowly getting back into it. I'm working on the pitch for another book, like a full-length book. It's going to be about women and horror, kind of along the line of Men, Women, and Chainsaws. Not that it's going to be anything like what Clover did, who is a genius, and that book is my Bible. But I'm going to try and write something about women in horror because I love horror. Just like, not that this The Crow is a straight horror, but it has horror aspects to it, and I love what horror says about us. So that next book is something that I'm very slowly trying to put together in my head. Other than that, though, I've just been very useless, making no money at all, which is nice.
Sounds like you're a real writer for sure.
Thank you. Not lazy at all. No.
You mentioned 33 and a third earlier. I'm actually in the midst of writing a 33 and a third book right now. I got picked to write one on Weird Al.
Oh my God. Stop it. Oh my God, that is so cool. Congratulations, first of all.
So, yeah.
Is this your first book?
Yeah.
Yeah? I promise there... It's gonna go. You're gonna do a killer job, but I promise also there might be a moment where, as you're writing, you're gonna be like, I feel like because it's in your head all the time, you're gonna be like, all of this is redundant. Everybody knows everything that I'm writing, so why even write this book? That's something I had when I was writing. I was like, this is stupid. Everybody knows this. So I'm gonna delete all of the words I've written and just never write again. So you have to overcome those anxiety thoughts. That's my bit of advice. Not that I have any right to give advice, but
no, but I appreciate it.
Keep writing.
That's definitely. I've definitely been at that moment where I'm just like, look, the fans know this. Why am I even saying this?
Right?
And it's like, and if they're not fans, they don't care. Why would they even pick up this book? Yeah.
Exactly. Literally, yes. Yeah. But no, you have to ignore those thoughts. Don't obey the intrusive thoughts.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, cool. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for talking to me. This is really good. And folks should go to the Skylight Books Arts Annex. That's where all of our film and music books are to pick up. It can't rain all the time. You can also get it from our website, skylightbooks.com. If you're living in Canada, get it from a lovely Canadian bookshop, please. It's really good. It's really worth it.
I write sometimes for Roger Ebert. The latest piece I wrote was on the materialists and the worst person in the world and how they're lonely films. Really proud of that piece. And I also write for Film Days. I wrote recently about David Lynch and Twin Peaks and music.
Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you. I love you guys. I love Skylight Books. I feel honored to be here. This was so nice. Thank you for talking to me.
Oh, thank you for talking to me. All right.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Skylight Books podcast series. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to check out the book featured in this episode, or others, please visit skylightbooks.com. If you're in the Los Angeles area, stop by for one of our live in-person author events. You can find a calendar on our website. If you like this podcast, leave us a review. It really helps us out. Our music is by Doug the Piano Wire. Till next time.